Welcome to the Roberts Law Office Injury Podcast. Kentucky attorney Jeff Roberts has over 25 years of experience. He'll provide answers to your questions related to personal injury and automobile accidents, workers' compensation claims, and Social Security disability benefits. Let's join Jeff for this episode. And friends, welcome back. We are in Calloway County with attorney Jeff Roberts. And Jeff, today we're going to talk about nursing home abuse, assisted living accidents, things like that go on that unfortunately occur more frequently than people would like to imagine that they do. But it's something that when it does, man, there's very few other cases out there that you get upset about because you've got some very, very vulnerable people that just are going through things they shouldn't have to experience.
You're absolutely right, Jim. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you, buddy.
These type of cases are ones that can really get you riled up when you first look into those type of cases. As you know, I do nursing home abuse and neglect cases, and I do, as I think I mentioned before, I'm an assistant county attorney here in Calloway County as well, and I do child abuse and child neglect cases for the county attorney's office, and those two types of cases that I handle, probably from a standpoint of getting me riled up, those are the ones that get me riled up the most, just because in both of those situations, 90+% of the time, these situations should have been and could have easily been avoided.
Right, and unfortunately, they're both, for the most part, innocent victims. So the children, obviously, and the adults. I mean, yeah, you can get a cantankerous, person once in a while, but for the most part, they're at the mercy of the staff and the healthcare team there.
Exactly. You've got very vulnerable victims in both situations, and usually in both situations, you have victims who cannot speak up for themselves.
So we're going to talk about 5 or 6 different types of abuse, and hopefully, if you're listening to this and you have an elderly relative or a loved one who's in a facility like this, you might also find some things to look for. So hopefully we'll be able to guide you there as well. The first one is this goes by a few different names, but they're technically called Decubitus ulcers, pressure sores. Jeff, do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because these are horrible.
Yeah, these can be extremely bad. These occur especially when you have people who cannot get up and walk around on their own. So you get the ulcer or pressure sore is kind of the common term I hear around here for those, and that's if somebody who lays in bed for a long period of time, if they are not moved so that they're putting different pressure on different parts of the body after a while, then where there is pressure on the skin, if they're laying down or if they're in a wheelchair and they're not moved, then they can develop some breakdown of the skin, and I will butcher the word name every time. That's one of them. That Decubitus, and I butchered that. I apologize. Ulcer or pressure sore, which is one of the reasons why I use the term pressure sore most of the time for these conditions. That will develop and can get deeper and deeper and result in some, frankly, I've seen situations where it has resulted in amputations of certain body parts, and clearly and frequently will result in some lengthy wound care treatment.
Well, and basically, as you said, the skin breaks down and suddenly a sore develops, and it almost kind of eats into the area. I mean, it's a deep. I mean, it's a nasty wound. Right. And so if you have a loved one who is bedridden in a nursing home or an assisted living facility, just check them over.
Yeah.
As long as you feel comfortable and they feel comfortable, take a look at their back, take a look at their buttocks area, take a look at their ankles and their heels in particular. You see it there a lot. And just make sure you don't see any wounds developing. There are ways to treat that. And in fact, some of these facilities should have special medical beds where the mattress inflates and deflates, and it kind of does some other things. I'm amazed at the technology, but yeah, this is horrible. And there's not anything that the patient can really do about it because they may not be able to see it.
Exactly. And what you, as you're talking about, you need to, it's not something that a family member or a loved one who goes and checks on the patient can just see when you look at someone either, because it is by definition, so to speak, it's going to be on the part of the body that is on the mattress or on the seat. So it's not in a real visible location. You have to take the effort to move the person up and try to look. And if they've got a shirt on, you may not see it then. You've got to lift in shirt and it's a situation where the family may not realize the person has that ulcer, pressure ulcer, and frequently these people who develop these because they aren't able to move about on their own may not have all their mental faculties about them as well to be able to tell the family member, I've got this sore on my back from, this pressure sore on my back that they're dealing with, so that the family member can keep an eye on it from that situation. So checking on the family, if you can, you definitely need to be doing that from there. But these should not occur. Moving the patient will avoid these from occurring. And as you talked about, there are mattresses and other things that can be used to help prevent these from ever occurring to start with. But once they do develop, proper treatment then becomes very vital for that. If it does not get treated, as I mentioned before, it can result in very serious complications. Frankly, if it gets bad enough and a person develops sepsis, it can be fatal. Now that should never happen, obviously, but it does, unfortunately. It does happen at times, but those are so these sores, pressure sores, can be extremely, extremely problematic for the person, and making sure not only hopefully that it's avoided and never happens, but then if it does occur, making sure it's getting properly treated and is being dealt with is something that the family members, if it does occur, is staying on top of that so that the person gets proper treatment.
Absolutely. And just from a definition standpoint, neither of us are doctors. We're not in healthcare, but sepsis is basically when a wound gets infected and that infection, I guess, gets into the system.
Yeah, the infection kind of gets into your system and then starts transferring throughout. It can transfer throughout the body from that
and that can be fatal, obviously.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think as we switch topics here, another situation that happens, again, more frequently than not, malnutrition and dehydration.
Yes.
And, a lot of times if you're not burning a lot of calories and you're just kind of there and maybe you're in and out of consciousness, maybe you're sleeping more because maybe you're medicated or maybe you just don't have the energy, you may not realize that, hey, I haven't eaten in a while. Or I may not, as you said in the previous situation, I may not be able to verbally express that, hey, I'm hungry or I'm thirsty. And so again, this comes up, and the healthcare staff could bring in the lunch or the breakfast or whatever. And if you're sleeping, maybe they take it out when it's time to clean up the room, and that person misses a meal.
Exactly, that can occur, or the person may not have the ability to feed themselves because of their health issues, and they need someone from the staff to help them eat and to feed them. And some people, we don't, as you get older and you get less active, you don't need as many calories to maintain. You're not burning as many calories from that standpoint, but the facility should be keeping a tab on your not only your intake but your output as well. From there, because both of those can be signs of something greater going on, or something that needs to be adjusted. So if you have difficulty eating and swallowing, and so then they can get a softer diet so that the person can eat and swallow without choking. But they need to know that it's not just okay. We come in and they only ate just a little bit of the meal. Well, why did they only eat a little bit of the meal? Was it because every time they took a bite of the meat that they choked because it was too thick for them or something? And so they should be able to doing all of that kind of monitoring to make sure, and go to softer foods if that's needed, and then potentially go to liquid. You've got different types of products out now, Boost and some others out there that
Ensure,
are
things like that, yeah.
Boost and some others like that that can be used to help for someone who can't chew real good or has problems from that standpoint, so that they are getting the nutrition that they need. I think most people would prefer to have their nutrition from food versus a drink if they can. But if you need a meal nutrition from that, then you can do. Then they can go that route. But they've got to be continuing to make sure of that. And again, kind of like it's not as bad as the pressure sores as far as families having a difficult time seeing it, but a lot of times with the malnutrition or the person's weight kind of goes down over time, going down kind of slowly to some extent over time, and so the family doesn't see it as much and may not realize it quite as much. And then frequently, if you've got someone who's not very mobile, they're in bed, and they're, especially if they're malnourished, they're very likely cold, so they've got covers up over them, so you don't see their body as much. So again, it's very important to make sure you're looking over your family member if they are in there. Hopefully they're in a facility that is very properly staffed, and that's one of the problems you come into with these is the facilities are understaffed, and you've got nurses and CNAs and other aides that they're trying to take care of everybody to the best of their ability. They just don't have enough people there to do it the way it ought to be done. But keeping an eye on your loved one and checking them out and making sure you kind of look at their take their shirts off or clothes and look, it can be very helpful in making sure that your family member is getting the proper care.
Well, and the thing is, if they're not, you can take action. You can
Correct.
talk to the medical staff. You can talk to the doctor. You can call the attorney and say, hey, something just doesn't seem right. What should I do? I mean, there's always that option just to kind of get some guidance and direction. Don't assume it's happening.
Correct, exactly.
Especially if you see some of these red flags.
If you see the red flags, bring it up. Talk to the director of nursing. Talk to the nurses that are taking care of your loved ones. Find out what the problem is. Talk to the doctors. Most, I assume all nursing homes have the doctor that comes there. If your family member has a family doctor that they've gone to for years, and you can take them to the family doctor, continue with that so the family doctor can look at them and maybe catch something that's going on as well. But, and if you see it starting and it doesn't get fixed when you bring it up, then look for a different facility.
Yeah, absolutely. The other issue here is we talked about malnutrition, but there's also the dehydration side where they're just not getting enough fluids, they're not getting enough liquids.
Correct.
And, I'd always heard of, you and I won't have this problem, but if we hold our hand out and we kind of pinch the skin on the back of our hand, it basically goes back into place. But if you're dehydrated, it kind of stays like that. They call that tenting, like you're pitching a tent, right?
Right.
That's a real easy way if you're in the room with mom or dad and you just you don't have to pinch them hard. You're not trying to bruise them, but just kind of see what's going on with that skin. That's another way to look at it. But,
right.
Dehydration can lead to a whole bunch of issues, including some kidney issues down
Absolutely.
the road. Yeah,
it can lead to kidney failure if
Yeah.
it gets bad enough.
Yeah,
Certainly.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, this is one that happens the staff is trained to avoid this, but this can lead to a head trauma and a whole bunch of other things, is when you have a fall in a nursing home. If you've got a loved one who's able to get up and around, or maybe they're in the bed and they just get knocked out of the bed. Maybe they roll over, they weren't restrained properly, the guards on the bed weren't up. This can lead to some serious injuries.
It can, obviously. It can lead to fractures. It can lead to head trauma from falling out of a bed or just falling if you're standing up. And that's one thing the facility should be doing when the patient first comes in is assessing their fall risk. From that standpoint, and it should be an ongoing assessment, not just when they first come in and then they don't ever have to reassess it again. Periodically, they need to be doing these reassessments of the patients that they have. And some come there, they may have had surgery, and they they go to the nursing or rehab facility for some rehab after that, and they can't get up and move. They're weak and they can't get up and walk on their own, and they are certainly a fall risk in that situation. And then frequently you may have someone who, as we talked about earlier, their mental faculties aren't what they used to be, and they don't realize they can't get up and walk. So unless they have some kind of a monitor on the bed to help let them know if somebody's trying to get up, or if they have some railing or something to help prevent falls, and those are things that you've got to address. But they can do monitors and things to let them know. And should, if that's the situation, if somebody's a fall risk, then they need to be keeping an eye on that. And then again, you have the situation where you need proper staffing. I've represented in my career, especially in the workers' comp side, nurses, aides, and LPNs, etc. And a lot of times they are very good at what, not frequently, they are very, very good at what they do, but they're also smaller and then dealing with a 200-pound man, and they weigh 100 pounds or something of that nature. And while they're trained in how to do that, it may be a two-person assist to get that person out of bed and get them into a wheelchair, or they may need to use a lift to do that or something of that nature, but they're understaffed, so they're not. So somebody's got to get up and they're trying to do it by themselves because they don't have enough staff, and that can cause someone to fall and break a hip or have something, another injury, and it comes back to proper staffing and proper training.
Well, and I would think a lot of these accidents happen when, again, transferring from the bed maybe to a chair or a wheelchair. Right. Maybe the wheel's not locked on the wheelchair, so it scoots out from under them at times. Falls going to the restroom or going into the bathroom and in the shower if they're able to stand up. I mean, maybe there comes a point where they don't necessarily need to be going into the separate bathroom for that. Maybe there are other ways to handle that. But yeah, these falls and things like that are very, very dangerous, and that could happen if the person's up and around in the facility. Maybe they're going down the hallway, or maybe they're transitioning from the tile floor onto a carpeted area, and just that change of material maybe just catches a foot or something like that. You got to be careful in that they have a responsibility to watch out for these patients, because these patients, they're struggling. That's the whole reason they're there right now, is just because they've had an issue,
right? And
they're not as mobile as they used to be.
Well, exactly, and it's sad that it's the way it is, but frequently obviously these facilities are monitored. There are certain standards they're supposed to comply with, and they are overseen from that standpoint. But as is the case in other areas, a lot of these facilities are for-profit facilities, and so if they can get by with understaffing, it improves their bottom line from that. If they can get by with fewer lifts in there than they really need to have, and so you got nurses and nurses' aides that don't have the proper equipment because it's much cheaper to have less, to not have that equipment.
Or they don't have the proper training on that equipment.
And all of that comes back. But, that's where the civil justice system comes in to has its greatest benefit. I mean, you help the family of the injured person as far as medical bills and things of that nature, and getting all of that taken care of. But that financial hit that they take, if there is a lawsuit, hopefully nobody gets hurt and there is not a lawsuit. But frankly, that fear of, okay, we're going to get sued if we don't properly take care of these people, sometimes is the motivating factor to keep the place properly staffed. But if it's a place that isn't properly staffed, once they get a jury verdict against them because of that, then they're much more likely to keep their facility properly staffed going forward after that as well.
Absolutely. And, well, Jeff, if this episode wasn't disturbing enough, we're actually going to go into some areas now that are very, very sensitive.
Right.
In terms of nursing home abuse, and these are, again, tragic situations, but one of them that comes up from time to time is physical abuse.
Yes. Yeah, you can have some physical abuse that occurs, unfortunately, in these facilities. You know, the nurses and the nurses' aides there are dealing with some individuals sometimes that can be difficult for whatever reason. And they're supposed to be properly trained. They should be verified and vetted and make sure that they have the proper demeanor to take care of these people. And most of the people who go in that field do, but unfortunately, there are some people who have anger issues or something of that nature, or develop it after they've been there for a while for whatever reason. And then they physically abuse a patient of theirs for, it could just be because they are that type of person, just a mean individual. It could be because they get frustrated with the person because the person's not able to do some of the things. Doesn't matter. There's no legitimate reason ever to physically abuse anyone. But that unfortunately does occur. And, when that occurs, obviously the person committing the abuse can and should be criminally charged in that setting. But if it's it can and frequently should come back on the facility if they haven't done proper training, proper oversight, and making sure that that's not occurring. Then the facility's at fault as well.
And maybe they didn't vet that individual necessarily.
Correct.
So,
improper training, improper, they went in the hiring process. They did not go through the vetting that they should have and do the research that they should have.
Yeah.
Correct.
Related to the physical, and again, if you're a family member, look for bruising. It's probably, talk to your family member if they can talk to you and do it where the staff is not in the room.
Right.
Let them feel safe in communicating with you, but document it.
Yes.
That's one thing you've got to do. Take a photo. Things like that. Just like in a car wreck. We've talked about this many times in a car wreck. A photo goes a long way because that bruise may heal over time, and
Right.
it may be hard to say, well, this happened. Well, there's no proof. Well, here's a photo.
Yeah.
And that definitely helps.
And frankly, there's been stories of I haven't had this case yet, and I hope I never have this case. To be honest with you, but there's I've talked to other attorneys and read articles and things about that where the abuse is then somewhat tried to be covered up, and the only way it's found out is because another person who works there goes to the family and says, "Look, this is what's going on. You need to, you need to get this addressed." And it's shouldn't occur in that regard. It should, when it's found out, the facility should be taking the action to correct the problem, getting rid of the individual and notifying police, etc. But unfortunately, that doesn't always occur. So you need to be very vigilant.
Yeah. And I think this will segue into this is just the mental abuse at times. And this is a little bit harder to pick up on maybe. And it's when, the staff or someone there at the facility has, been aggressive with the patient. Maybe they've yelled at them a lot and the patient's got a lot of anxiety, got a lot of nervousness or, crying more frequently than, just like an abused individual.
Right.
There are signs.
Yes.
And if you notice that, you need to kind of start asking some questions.
Yeah, true. I mean, there are some conditions that as we age that can cause our personality to change to some extent. So you have to be part of that. But if they're in a facility and they've been engaging with you the way they always have been, and then all of a sudden there's a sudden change in their behavior, you need to look into that. And verbal abuse can certainly lead to that type of change in someone's behavior to where they are more withdrawn. Physical abuse can do that as well, where they're more withdrawn and where they are not engaging with family members or anyone else, and they're scared. Used to you'd walk in the room and they'd be happy to see you, and now as soon as somebody walks in the room, they jump back. And so those type of things, keep an eye on that, and then and if they are where they can communicate with you well and their mental faculties are good, ask them those questions. How are they treating you? Is anybody being ugly to you, yelling you, or a resident or a staff member?
That's a good point. A resident or a staff member.
Yeah, exactly. And so you need to have those kind of conversations with your loved ones that are in these facilities.
Yeah. Well, Jeff, and along these lines, this will lead to the third one that again is extremely uncomfortable to talk about, but it's unfortunately, it's sexual abuse of an elderly individual who's in one of these facilities, and this is horrendous.
Right. It is, and I don't. You would think that it would never ever occur, but unfortunately, it does. Again, obviously, there's criminal charges associated with that. You would think that it would never be covered up by the facility, but unfortunately, I think it is covered up at times from there. But you come back to not only is the person criminally liable, but if the facility has not done the proper checking in the training and hiring process and oversight process, then they are at fault as well. I mean, they may not be as much at fault as the person who perpetrated the act, but they've allowed it to be perpetrated because they didn't do their job in doing the background checks on these individuals or doing the training and in making sure the other staff members know if they see something concerning to speak up, because the person frequently they don't start right with the abuse. They'll do other things, and it gradually gets bolder and bolder and engaging in more activity that should not be engaged in. And so if other staff members are trained and also know that it is not only okay for them to come forward and say, I've got a concern, I've seen this person do this, and I'm concerned about what I saw. Y'all need to look into this and talk to them. If they know that not only is it okay for you to do so, but we want you to do so that we can make sure we're protecting that. But in some facilities, the staff members just don't feel comfortable going to report it because they think it's going to blow back on them.
Is there some type of whistleblower protection or something like that? I don't know if that's really come up, but I would think, if I'm worried about reporting something, if I knew I had some kind of shielding there, maybe I'd be more open to doing so. Are you aware of anything like that?
I think there would be, but I'm not positive because I don't do whistleblower cases, so I haven't really researched that, but I'm assuming there would be some whistleblower protection there, but I'm not positive on that. So.
Right. Well, Jeff, as you said back in the mental abuse, when you brought up it could be another resident, and that again, could be something there, and I would think the facility has some responsibility, especially if there have been reports about a patient or resident. They probably have a protocol to deal with that.
They should have a protocol to deal with that, and that should be something that's addressed on the intake process from that standpoint. But they definitely should have a protocol to deal with it, and they should be monitoring to make sure that type of thing is not going on.
And a lot of times, as I understand it, where they take on liability is when they fail to follow their own policies and procedures. When they ignore that or whatever, they just choose not to enforce it. They're liable at that point. I would think. I'm not the attorney, obviously.
it certainly goes to, if they have policies and procedures that they're not following, it's certainly evidence of neglect. The law does not say if you have this policy and you fail to follow that policy, you're automatically liable for that. There's not that kind of strict liability, but it's evidence of neglect on their part. Ultimately, it's a jury determination on whether they were neglectful or not in that regard. But it's strong, if they don't follow the rules they put forth, obviously they put the rules in place because they think that's appropriate. And unfortunately, the rules in place are normally the minimum standards. This is the minimum we want you to do, not what you need to be doing. Not, hopefully you've got staff members going above and beyond, but that, if they're not even keeping up with the minimum requirements that they put in place, that should be found to be negligent, in my opinion. But ultimately, it's going to be the determination of a jury that hears all the facts.
Absolutely. So we've got a few minutes left here. So let's talk about just some general care red flags that you may see. And unfortunately, the bed sheets, the bed linens, have they been changed out? Do you seem to think that no, they're in the same bed sheets that they've been in for a few days? Last time I was here, but that was on there. Or maybe the room is extremely dirty. Maybe that again, that can create an unsafe environment as well. But there's a lot of these little red flags that, and if they're allowing one thing to happen, they could be allowing other things to happen.
Correct. You've got the not changing the bedding like they ought to, but not changing the patient. Some of these individuals, or frequently these individuals, aren't able to get up and go to the bathroom on their own, and so they may, they may use the bathroom, wearing diapers or whatever, depends type garments, and use the bathroom and then not change as frequently as they need to be. If it's feces, then they tend to get changed, hopefully a little more frequently, because they know that. But if you have urine on your skin for a long time, as people who've had children know, you can get diaper rash, and that can cause greater and greater problems. And it's not just babies that can develop that. Those type of problems can develop from an elderly person not being changed like they ought to be changed as frequently from the doctors. And I mentioned earlier, that's one they should be monitoring the output. In just the general medical care of the patient, and if they're not following up on all of these things, they may not realize the person's urinary output has gone way down, and they've got they may have a blockage or something of that nature that's causing them problems, and that can lead to kidney infection, bladder infection, urinary tract infection, etc., or it can lead to even greater problems than that. So monitoring of these things, they need to be monitoring all of that to make sure they're properly caring for the individual, and checking how they're overseeing the rooms can really, if they're not changing the bedding like they ought to, they very well may not be changing everything else like they ought to as well.
Yeah, there's telltale signs, and it's like you start pulling on a thread, and to see where it leads, and unfortunately, It can be tragic. Jeff, you've been handling injury cases for over 30 years now, and your primary office is here in Murray in Calloway County, but you've also got a second office up in Hopkinsville, up in Christian County.
Yes, I do. I've had that office open for a little over a year now. Yeah. And I opened that office, as you know from our conversations. My practice, even from the time I started practicing, has been. It started kind of regional, and then as my reputation developed, it became more of a statewide practice, but still primarily Western Kentucky areas where the majority of my clients are. But I was having a lot of clients up in the Trigg County, Christian County area, and so it decided to open that office up there to better serve that area as well. And I like that office. It's worked out well.
Yeah, good deal. So with this type of law, though, you're not limited to just Western Kentucky. In fact, I know on the comp and the injury side of law, you do stuff up in Northern Kentucky. You do stuff up in the Louisville, Jefferson County area, over in Fayette County.
Correct.
Bowling Green, you've got cases over in Bowling Green. So
yes.
It's not just a Western Kentucky practice.
Correct. My practice is not just Western Kentucky practice at all from that standpoint, and I do take these cases all over the state from that standpoint. So regardless of where you are, and frankly, if you're out of state, I usually associate with somebody in another state if that's the case, and try to find the best in that area to handle those type of cases. So, but if you've had, hopefully you have not, but if you've had a family member who has been mistreated and been neglected in a nursing home setting, then you feel free to give me a call. The best way to reach me is to call my office. You can call 270-753-0053. Have an 800 number, 1-800-844-5108, and you will reach my office regardless of Hopkinsville, Murray. Call that number. That's the number to reach me.
Oh, that's outstanding. You've got a contact us form on the website as well, and you've got a nice little intake opportunity there.
Yes.
If somebody wants to do a little bit of a chat and kind of get going. Now that's staffed by another group, but that information goes directly to you, so you can follow up with
that absolutely, and frankly, sometimes that's a good way to share information and get information to me. If a lot of times people depending on what their work shift is, they may be awake in the middle of the night when there's nobody monitoring my phones. You can leave a message and we'll call you back. But I've had clients that prefer to email me because of their work shift, which is jeff@jeffrobertslaw.com, or to use that contact form on my website to reach out to me as well, just because they know I'll get that the next time as soon as I come back in the office. That is emailed to me right after the conversation, so I have that information, and we can reach back out to you when we're available.
Perfect. Well, Jeff, I appreciate your time. I know you handle all sorts of motor vehicle accidents. You handle workers' comp. You handle Social Security disability cases. You handle nursing home cases. I mean, you're a busy guy, and unfortunately, those accidents and those injuries happen with a significant level of frequency. So, I appreciate you carving out time for us, and we'll be back in about 2 weeks.
Thank you, Jim.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Roberts Law Office Injury Podcast. Jeff will return in 2 weeks. Until then, he invites you to visit jeffrobertslaw.com and follow his firm on Facebook. At the Roberts Law Office, you'll find a history of small town service and big city results.